set.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're good. All right, Cabbie, welcome to the Pals podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this for a long time.
Yeah, we're finally glad we got to make it happen. So I guess we'll start off. How's everything down in Vegas?
It is an interesting time because, as you know, Vegas is a hospitality town, and it was decimated by the coronavirus. It happened right around the March Madness tournament, and those opening 4 days of the tournament are the biggest weekend in Las Vegas. There is, I think, the estimated loss was $100 million in sports revenue. So it was catastrophic. But people are, I was just I went to the MGM the other day because I'm doing these like NBA bet streams, and we use this Bet MGM app. So in order to use the app, I have to go and you got to give them your license, they got to validate it, and then you got to open an account. So I went there, and there are people walking around, people checking into the hotel. I went on like a Thursday. I was like, wow, this people are actually here. And even I don't know if I would personally, but everybody's wearing a mask, which is compulsory and which is great. I haven't met any Karens or Kevins that refuse to wear masks. They want to fight people at a Whole Foods or a Target or a Costco. So thank God, because I would just pull out my phone and record them and then just upload it and just embarrass them, because those people are the derelicts of earth. But Vegas is slowly coming back. I don't know when they'll fully recover from the economic recession, but it's coming back.
Well, I mean, again, to your point, it lost March Madness. Summer League is usually would have just kind of happened.
Right. Yeah.
And then obviously the league starting up, tourism, let alone tourism. So I guess it's got to be pretty quiet in comparison to the time of year how it would normally be.
It was. And then they just built a beautiful new stadium for the Vegas Raiders. It is gorgeous. It's a black sphere with all encased in black glass. It looks beautiful. It looks like no other stadium, even where the Golden Knights play, the T-Mobile Arena, that looks like no other stadium too. It's like this really cool wood paneling, but it's all curved and it's layered and it's woven. Generally buildings are like red brick, or some of them are gray. Some of them are I don't know, I'm trying to Staples Center, I guess that's kind of gray, but yeah. These two I guess they're the two newest buildings in sports. Or the Seattle building is being built now, but the two newest ones, in LA, where the Raiders, where the Rams and the Chargers are playing in Carson City. That's brand new, but it's beautiful. So my point is, they were expecting, 60,000 people there, every other Sunday or whatever, one preseason game, 8 regular season games. So that's no longer going to be the case in 2020.
Yeah, do you know what? I just saw that they sent all their season ticket holders, I guess their season
sick.
And the presentation, I was just like, okay,
it was beautiful.
We're both Leafs and Raptors season ticket holders. I'm like, man, MLSE, step it up a bit here.
Yeah, it was tremendous. So for people who haven't seen it, it was it's in the shape of the stadium. You open a flap and then you open the cover, and then there's another cover that retracts, and then you see the field with the Raiders logo on it, and it's beautiful. It must cost $200 or $300 per one of those cases, and I imagine they have anywhere from 20 to 30 to 40,000 season seat holders. So that was they spent a pretty penny on that.
Well, I mean, it's Vegas, right? Showmanship out there is kind of the name of the game. Even with the Golden Knights, I've actually been to a game, and I've never seen an introduction or kind of they kick off games like that ever of all the sporting events I've been to.
It's the best one. It's the best one in hockey for sure. Their on game or their game day on ice presentation is second to none. Yeah, that first 6 to 7 minutes with the night, and then and then the guy on the drums, and it's really dope. I agree with you.
I'm interested to see what if the Raiders will kind of take some of that as well and put some kind of there hasn't been much about that. I'm guessing they're going to do something, but it'd be interesting to see how they kind of go about it.
That's a good question. And I imagine it's probably dialed back because the performers may not be able to rehearse. And, I would imagine if this was in our old normal in 2019, it would be a full Cirque du Soleil, dudes on zip lines and then some fireworks and then twirling, dudes on a trapeze, and then there's a random elephant, and then there's like some swashbucklers. What's that?
Some guy parachuting in through the top, like
yes.
Think about it. Like, imagine how nuts it would be. You got Raiders versus Chiefs at home Sunday night prime time. Mahomes in town. You have that. There's no bigger like new stadium, new team. No big stage than that, right?
It would be tremendous, and I imagine that the players would beg their general manager to let them spend the night, especially after like the Chiefs. But generally, the players have to leave right after the game. But I'm sure the Chiefs were like, can we please just stay? And like, if they were heading into a bye week, GM might be like, all right, you guys get one night on.
Well, on the point of NFL, what are your thoughts? Do you think the season's going to happen? I mean, like having 50 guys aside, 50-something plus coaches. I know they're saying they want to play, right? Yeah. But like, any idea like what the likelihood of that happening is? Because it seems in the circumstances that we're in, it'd be one of the toughest sports to manage with all the people that are on the field and all that.
That's a good point. I think each team has applied a bunch of precautions, a bunch of health measures. I think the season will start. I guess the question is, will the season end based on how many positive tests are going to come back for COVID-19? But the NFL is such a monstrous business that there's no way those 32 owners are going to be like, we're not going to leave this TV money on the table. Like, it's the TV contract, I think it's $4 billion a year. Don't quote me on that, but with the networks, CBS, Fox, ESPN pays $1.1 billion a year for one game a week.
Yeah.
Monday Night Football. That's it, bro. And it's 17 days. So it is obviously the biggest sport in North America, probably number 2 to the Premiership in as far as global sports. But I think it's going to start. I hope it ends. And I guess it's up to each team to manage how many positive cases can they manage at one time. We're seeing it in baseball, and those guys didn't really respect the precautions because dudes were in the hotel lobby bar mixing it up with the guests when they're on the road, and then all of a sudden, like, full weekend series were canceled because 18 Marlins got the coronavirus, or the Mets had a few guys get test positive. I think the Braves as well. So, I mean, football. I mean, we saw that one cornerback, one guy on the defense try to like sneak a ting in. Where I mean, I give him props for the effort. The execution, obviously didn't work out, but
honestly, if you think about it, they expect these guys to go. You got guys who are 24 to 26 in the prime of their careers, testosterone like raging, and you expect them not to try and sneak some girls in? Like, that's a tough one.
Yeah, that they should manage those expectations. But listen, if it was, I don't know, if it was Bobby Wagner, let's say, the captain of the defense, he's not getting cut. No, I don't want to say Russell Wilson because Russell Wilson has a beautiful wife, Sierra. They just had a baby. Like, but if it's and Bobby Wagner might have a wife too and some kids as well. I don't know, but I'm just saying, like, if it was one of the star players, that player is not getting cut. So if you're more valuable to your team, maybe you get a little bit more wiggle room for those kind of late night wiggles.
Yeah, that's what's funny. So the guy's a rookie, and like, I mean, again, maybe he doesn't know better, but like, you're risking your career. Yeah. Just like for what, one night? Like, I mean, if it's your girlfriend, you're desperate. Maybe that's one thing, but it's a lot to sacrifice. Like, you live your whole life to make it to the show, and you try to sneak a girl in undercover. And I mean, it's a great story, great content, but like, you got to think a little more than that. I'm sure he didn't consider the consequence. Like, are they going to cut me for this? No, I'll probably get a fine. Maybe I gotta pension. Maybe I gotta miss a game, but fully cut. Like, there's no way he thought that was going to be the repercussion for that action.
Well, speaking about that, what about Lou Will putting it all on the line at in the bubble?
About to risk it all for some lemon pepper chicken wings. Apparently, there was a death of a family friend or a close friend, and that's why he went to Atlanta, and then ended up at it wasn't House of Diamonds. Where was it?
Magic City,
yeah. Magic City, and then Jack Harlow's like, "What's poppin'? Let's get a little selfie." And then And then he's the reason that Lou Will gets busted because Lou Will is wearing the NBA issued face mask at Magic City. And then people are like, yo, this isn't a picture from 3 weeks ago. This is from you guys just got there 2 weeks ago. Like, there's no way you would have got that, that mask before you entered the bubble. So yeah, he got burnt.
Well,
I was just gonna say, I feel like that's a typical. I don't know Lou personally, but I feel like if I did, that's something he would do. Like,
well, I think he either grew up in Atlanta or played in Atlanta for many years, so I'm sure he has a lot of friends there.
Yeah.
He's from Gwinnett. He's from Gwinnett, because Drake says something Lou Will. He says like from Gwinnett right in the beginning of that 6-man verse. So yeah, he's from that area.
But I'm not surprised. Even when Lou was in Toronto, I mean, you would see him like you just walked out downtown after a game or any weeknight, and he was that's the one guy you always saw out and about in the city.
I never saw Lou Will. I wish I did. I respected his gangster having a girlfriend who had a girlfriend. Like that was just, he's a legend for that for the rest of time.
Yeah.
Nah, he's only 6-man that pulls up from the logo. Steady.
It's a good point.
Well, since we're on the topic of NBA, to kind of jump into that, I mean, what are your thoughts on how things have been going on in the bubble right now? Like, obviously it's an interesting time because, they've had great success with what's happening in terms of like the playing, keeping players safe, healthy, all the personnel. But obviously there's a lot going on in the world right now that might impact that. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on what's been going on from the bubble perspective and then from the other side as well?
My perspective on the boycott is that it was necessary. Like if we look at over the course of time, it feels like the people in power, the only thing they really respond to is when the money is affected. There are, for decades and centuries, people that look like me that live in America have been peacefully protested. They've marched. They've tried to protest in the music, whether it's hip hop or R&B or jazz. They've had sit-ins at restaurants. They've had bus boycotts, like in Montgomery, Alabama. They've walked over bridges, like all these things. And then people question, like, this isn't the right time to protest. Well, when is the right time? And like, what is the right way to protest? Because all these peaceful things don't seem to have any substantial change. So I applaud the players I think it's more of a strike than a boycott, but I applaud the players for that courageous stand, because ultimately they have a lot to lose as well, because, lost TV revenue affects the collective bargaining agreement, which affects how much the players get paid next year. And there are a ton of guys on contract deals, but this is bigger than basketball. And with the murder of Jacob Blake in Kenosha, Wisconsin, you juxtapose that, a guy who breaks up a fight, he's got kids in the car, trying to get out of there or whatever, who knows what he was trying to do, but goes back. Listen, I know there's been reports that there was a knife in the car. You don't bring a knife to a gunfight. Everybody knows that. And what are you going to do? You're going to take on 2 cops with a knife? Like, be real. Like, that's not going to end well for you. And it didn't end well for him as he was just trying to get in the car. So juxtapose that with Kyle Rittenhouse, the kid from Antioch, Illinois, who crosses state lines from Illinois to Wisconsin. He's carrying an AR-15 like it's Call of Duty in real life. And he's running around the streets and he passes officers who don't stop him. Like, what is this person doing with an AR-15? So people who look like me see that, and they see the injustice in just that, like how this kid, and then the kid murders 2 people and he shoots a third when people, try to jump him because he's running around. He already shot a couple people, I think, trying to protect a gas station, as though it's his civic duty to protect a gas station. So, man, I applaud guys in the MLB, definitely applaud the entire WNBA. And we'll see what the protests or what the protests will be like in the NFL, which is going to start in a matter of days. Disappointed with hockey, but I applaud the players today. I don't know when this is going to be posted, but There it felt like about 100 players were in that press conference. Ryan Reeves, Nazem Kadri, et cetera, and a bunch of their colleagues in the bubble in Edmonton were speaking like it's important that this moment be recognized as a turning point. And they're trying to continue the conversation and also trying to force people in power, people that wield political power and people that have financial power, to get in those state legislature buildings, get in meetings with the mayors and say, hey, we need structural changes. Like there needs to be a change between the mayor's office and police departments. There needs to be accountability when people are murdered or severely injured. Listen, these protests aren't going to solve racism. When you get on Twitter, the bots come out and like also just random people go, oh, like this is going to be the solution. No one's saying this is the solution, but it's to call attention to a problem, and the problem needs fixing. It's going to take many years because governments move very slowly. I mean, it's not like you go to In-N-Out Burger and you get a meal very quickly in a matter of minutes. Like that's not how it works in the government. So again, I always stand with the players, because as a person who is an employee, I always stand with labor. And I never quite understand when fans are upset at players when they strike or when they get locked out, they're greedy. Like, unless you're a business owner, how do you side with management versus labor? Because most of us are labor. So, but anyway, that's part of a bigger issue. But those are my thoughts on the boycott, the strike. I'm happy that, and I'm sorry this is such a long answer. I'm happy that.
Honestly, it's such a big topic, an important topic, and today, like especially right now, and we're going to be releasing this tonight because we want to do this right now, and we want to obviously talk about it. And the biggest question that a lot of people say is like, well, what's boycotting or what's striking going to do? It's going to do exactly this: get people talking about it, get people educated on the topic, and get the conversation going. Because at least from what I've read, a lot of people feel that, okay, the media is not covering it anymore. People are still protesting all over North America, but the media is not covering it anymore. Okay, get it back on the forefront. Get the media talking about it. And that's exactly, again, we're not anybody special, but if we get our couple thousands of listeners listening to this, talking about it, educating people, that's what it's about, right?
Right. And there is also strength in numbers. So when people take to the street and peacefully protest, they make their signs, it's showing the people in power like, oh, we have a problem and we need to address it because we have our constituents, these 7,000 people that are walking down the main boulevards of our town. Like, we need to address this because these people are upset and they want change, and that has to happen. I'm glad that the NBA players have decided to resume the season because I really believe that the NBA platform is global and there is strength in numbers. And with a unified message and a unified voice, that message can carry greater than one or two stars in their local markets. What I would love to see is these guys are forming their strategy, and strategy is so important when you're trying to elicit change, or in any company or any endeavor, like, what is our strategy? That's like business 101. I would love it if, the main stars in MLB or NBA or the NFL say to their board of governors or say to the owners of those franchises, you guys have so much political power, and so we need you, as we are partners, we need you to go speak to that state senator. We need you to go talk to that mayor, because these are the things we want changed, and we want you to do it, because these people, and they're generally men, these men are billionaires. So if Mark Cuban or Mickey Arison in Miami calls the state senator or calls the mayor, that person's picking up the phone call. And that person is going, I want a meeting with you in the next 48 hours, that person's going to make it happen, because those business owners are huge pillars in their communities. And it's in NHL as well. Those ownership groups wield a lot of power too. So I would love it if that was the next step. The players pushing their ownership groups or their board of governors to say, we want you to represent us, because if you really care about us and the product that we deliver, then you'll do this for us. I would love to like that to be the next wave, or that part of the strategy that's then implemented. These owners are back. They're outside of the bubble. So they have time as they're watching, they're either watching the ratings or watching their players play or whatever, but they have time. So that's what I would love to see.
I mean, the other thing too that's kind of interesting, like any company, like anything, right? You made a point about the labor, and like to build a culture in any corporation, any company, like you want your employees to be happy. And I mean, you see that, especially with the NBA, how far it's come in the last, let's say, decade or two. Like it went from like an obscure league that merged two leagues to 20, or maybe like 50, 60, 70 years ago, to now probably close to being one of the biggest, if not one of the biggest global sports brands in the world. I mean, you would think that people who make a lot of money and profit off this, the owners, would say the talent keeps growing. They keep bringing the social media presence. They're the ones bringing the fans. The billionaires aren't putting fans in the seats. The guys like LeBron and Kawhi and Luka Doncic put the butts in the seats. You think that it's just something very small. Keep your employees, as you will, the talent happy, and you will continue to thrive. If anything, too, the NBA can gain traction because they do a great job of uniting communities, and they have that really interpersonal feel with the players and the fans. So, I mean, they could not only, as an owner, you would think I can even take more, if you want to think the business side, more fans to my thing and show that I believe in this cause. And it's something so small that you can do would have such a lasting impact for the future growth of the league as well.
I totally agree. And it's, and they're partners. I mean, Adam Silver, I think, is the best commissioner in sports, and he really views the players as his partners. And it's the most progressive league. We see the most with female assistant coaches, the most female executives. Unfortunately, there isn't a female owner yet, or a general manager, or a coach, head coach, but that is coming because the NBA, diversity is its strength. Diversity is a competitive advantage. I heard that said by Shelby Weaver, who works for MLSE. She said that in an interview recently with Donovan Bennett at Sportsnet, and that is Masai's way of thinking. When Masai first joined MLSE, there was one female executive. Now there are 13. He's been there for 6 or 7 years, but that is part of the culture change. And as you mentioned, in the NBA or in any company, corporate culture is very important. And if the corporate culture is one that is inclusive, and the culture believes in promoting voices of people of color or very like genders or whatever, then the players will feel no ways about striking or using their voices. If they're given the power to use their voices, specifically in the NBA.
Did you know what? Even talking about, I think about the NBA is the first major sports to allow players to have slogans on their jerseys.
Right.
You know, the Raptors, they just appointed someone in charge of, diversity or social.
Yeah, I believe his name is John Davis. I think I could have that wrong, but it was within the last month or two. Yeah.
This doesn't happen without all the protests in the background, without the players speaking up, without people trying to make a change, or else it's, it would just be, and I hate to say this, like rich white men running the league, right? So it's the players that are the ones that are making this change, and then it kind of goes all the way up from there. So it's good to see that people are doing things are being covered. It sucks as a sports fan when a season gets put on hold or a season gets canceled, but I feel like just the way the whole year has been, first with COVID and now a lot of these social issues, that, it's, at the end of the day, if sports get canceled, they get canceled because there's bigger things to worry about in the world.
You know what? I honestly believe this. Maybe 2020 is going to be the best year. I know at the beginning of the year, we almost had like World War III with Iran. And then, Kobe leaves us.
Just going to say that.
And then, we obviously have this, we have the coronavirus pandemic. We're in this time where there's like racial, like the pandemic of racism. But like maybe these are the catastrophic events that in 2 or 3 or 4 years, when the seeds are planted now, maybe in 4 years from now, it's like, whoa, like we have more vaccines and we have, that we have police accountability and there are, maybe there's the first female owner of a baseball team. Actually, no, there was Marge Schott, with the Cincinnati Reds in the late 90s. But maybe there are female head coaches in the NBA, or there's a female head coach in the NFL. Like, even though 2020 has been, for all intents and purposes, an absolute shit show, maybe it's going to be the best year because of what changes will occur in the future.
Yeah, it's been a crazy year. And obviously right now, I mean, things do seem like bleak with what's going on. I mean, you turn the news on and it's something bad every day. You open Twitter and it's just all like the world is ending and all these bad things. But to your point, like maybe sometimes things need to get broken down to the bottom to get rebuilt the right way. And I mean, it's easy for someone, sitting like in my position to say that. But honestly, like it'll be hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And we won't really know for a couple of years what comes out of this. But again, maybe it was needed, because one other thing that I saw recently, which was kind of interesting, I think yesterday, I think the boycott in the games was like 4 years to the day of Colin Kaepernick. You see, like that's what's interesting is like it's anything, right? Like, yeah, and like the interesting thing with like anything in life, they say like making small changes compounds and gets bigger, right? But it's a shame that they couldn't have just seen that for what it was and slowly made small, tiny changes. You don't have to boil the ocean. Make tiny changes, and 4 years now, he would have been farther ahead. And now it's a shame that nobody respected what he was doing. Not nobody, but the people that were in power didn't respect it. They thought he was a slap in the face to the flag, which it was not evident. And now it's a shame it took 4 years to realize. But had they listened to the guy who was being peaceful, just standing up for something he believed in, risked his career, risked everything to do that all. Now we got to go to the point where, like, it seems like everything's in turmoil and everything's bad, to start opening everyone's eyes. I mean, maybe people now will see that maybe that's what good comes out of this. Maybe after this is done, we'll say, when someone speaks up and says something that they're calling for change, maybe it's because they feel something and we should listen.
And to your point, Colin Kaepernick was on the right side of history. And we're in this moment now, and these NBA players, baseball players, guys who are using their platforms, using their voices to call out injustices, they're on the right side of history. And unfortunately for Colin Kaepernick, who literally gave up his career because he recognized this thing was bigger than him, and he was trying to call attention to what we're seeing on cell phone video, it seems like every week. And that's been happening for decades. But I think I read Will Smith say this. He said, racism isn't growing, it's just being recorded. It's just being caught on video. And now, people are starting to see like, oh, there's video evidence. So it's like, it's undeniable that there are two Americas. And, I feel so bad for Colin Kaepernick, who had his entire narrative co-opted for them. Oh, it's about disrespecting the flag. But like, no, Nate Boyer was the Marine, not Marine. I think he was a Green Beret. Anyway, he was. What was it? Who did he work with?
Oh, but he was in the Army.
Yeah, he was in the armed forces, and he said, no, it's more respectful to kneel. And here we are now. We had NBA players kneeling before games. We had 4 guys in the NHL, Sagan, Binnington, Ryan Reeves, and I can't remember the Ryan Reeves, not Binnington, excuse me. I can't remember their teammates. Anyway, those guys were kneeling. We saw 10, 12 Jays kneel. I mean, so now it's a safe space for guys to peacefully protest. When Kaepernick was him, Eric Reed, I think Malcolm Butler, there were a handful of guys in the NFL that knelt, and I don't think any of them are. I don't think Eric Reed has a job right now. I mean, he was the last player. He was playing for the Carolina Panthers last year. He was the last one to kneel, and he's no longer in the league.
It's just a shame because like no one with true peaceful protest, like that was as peaceful you get taken, and you're not hurting anybody, like literally nobody. And I mean, to get to now, like for the last couple months now, like there's riots and stores are getting vandalized and looted and people are getting killed in the street. Like again, you could have just said that he's kneeling. What is he doing? I don't understand. He's not hurting anybody. And now this is what it's come to kind of bring awareness to it. It's a shame that that's where it's gone. But
and one thing, even I watched a video about this maybe 2-3 months ago, and it was just Colin Kaepernick talking with our retired vets, and just talking about how what he's doing, they all respected it. It's not like they were hating on him and against him. And you have these people in power that are calling it disrespectful, and then there's so many people in the States that think it's disrespectful just because people in power say it's disrespectful. But it's like, have the conversation, listen to what he's saying in his press conferences, listen to what the point he's trying to make, and you'll see that it wasn't disrespectful. It wasn't meant to piss on vets or disrespect the country. No, it meant change. It meant that what is happening isn't good. It's not right. There needs to be change, and it's a shame that it cost him his career because he was the Mahomes of 4 years ago, right? You know, like a fast gunslinger.
Yeah, he was he was one catch away from winning the Super Bowl in 2012 against the Ravens in New Orleans. Like he had one of his greatest performances. He just mercilessly destroyed the Green Bay Packers, I think, on their field in the NFC Championship game. He was an incredible talent. And then, you know, people are like, you know, they sometimes there's an imperfect messenger, but the message is the right one. Kaepernick, people are like, oh, he sucks now. He's just doing it for attention. We saw that with hockey with Akeem Aliu. You know, people are like, he's not the right messenger. But he was saying like, hey, this is my experience and this is what I went through. And then people like to co-opt the narrative and say he's just doing it for attention. Well, when is the right time to talk about these things? When is the right time to discuss someone's personal history or personal experience? And it comes down to empathy. It's like, will you listen to will you try to put yourself in someone else's shoes and then understand their perspective and then try to have some compassion, like, oh, I didn't realize it was that bad for you, or I didn't realize. And then that's when human change could happen. You know, you open your heart a little bit. I know that sounds kind of cheesy and it's harder to do than the way I'm saying, but it's important to do because we're all in this together.
And then even like with hockey, you mentioned Akeem Aliu. And I grew up playing hockey, and he was a year older than me, but we crossed paths on the ice a couple of times. And growing up, I never witnessed any racism in hockey. But mind you, the percentage of Black people that play hockey at a high level is very small.
Yeah.
And you hear him tell his story, and you would think, just based on an outsider perspective, like, again, oh, he's just doing it for attention. It's like, no, this actually happened. You hear people like PK Subban speak up. You hear people like Evander Kane. We had Mark Frazier on our podcast 3 months ago talking about it. And you see, like, direct change came from that. The Hockey Diversity Alliance was built. And again, it's a shame that let's say hockey didn't make a big of a stand as the NBA or MLB or NFL, but, you know, they're learning as well. And today, they, like you said, they had the big press conference this morning. And so they're learning, they're making changes. People are speaking up, and that's what it's all about, right? It's one thing to listen and ignore, and that's wrong. But if you can listen, educate yourself, and make change, that's what it's about. Learning, educating. And if everybody would just listen to what's happening and educate themselves, I feel like the world would be in a much better spot right now. But it's disappointing to know that certain humans and certain people are still stuck in a different century. So
agreed. I'm actually, as you say that, it makes me think of Flyers coach Alain Vigneault, who has the privilege not to pay attention to things that don't happen to him, but things that happen to others, they have to pay. I mean, they've no choice. And he was like, I'm not paying attention to what's happening outside of the bubble. Like it's actually infuriating, and it's gross. Like, if your wife, Alan, you know your wife texts you, right? You are going to respond to her when she texts you. You have a phone, you have the access to info, but you're being willfully ignorant to what's going on in the other sports. And that's just unacceptable. You know that if in Quebec City they were shooting unarmed white kids, he would be paying attention. So because these things aren't happening to him or people that look like him, that's where the empathy comes from. He's just like, he just has that privilege to not pay attention, and that's just unacceptable. As someone who's the face of their franchise and someone who's part of the leadership structure of that franchise, being a head coach, unacceptable. And
specifically, if you think about Philly and everything that happened with Wayne Simmons back in, I want to say the early 2010s.
12 or 13, in that exhibition game in London.
Yeah, exactly what I was going to talk about. Like, Wayne Simmons is arguably one of the best Black hockey players in the NHL, you know, and he's had a great career. He's been there for about 10 years or so now.
Yeah.
And to hear that happen, you're like, what world do we live in? You know, like, this is an NHL player, one of the best in the world at what he does. And you're going to treat a human like that. Never mind an athlete who's prepared their whole lives for this. You're going to treat another human like that. Like,
but remember, like, fans just see athletes as like either data points on their fantasy team. Like, how are you helping my selfish interest? And then a lot of times there's so much jealousy because these guys are at the top 1% in their field, and they can make a certain living because they're the best. Like, be better at what you do, fan. Like, be more valuable to your company, and then maybe you can get a similar salary. But like, there's just so much hate on these public figures and that's how it manifests, unfortunately, in that ugly, despicable incident where some fan throws a banana on the ice at the John Molson Center or Molson Arena, whatever it's called in London. It was just another appalling incident. But it's part of the history of hockey. I mean, Joel Ward scores a goal in Game 7 with the Capitals against the Bruins. Oh, Twitter was a sewer of the N-word. Like, it was literally typed thousands because a black hockey player scored a goal against your team like less than 10 years ago. And it's part of the world that we live in, man.
Yeah. And we had, like Georgie said, we had Mark Frazier on, and he told some stories that you just can't imagine, like, being in that position. And that's the point that we want, like, when we bring people on and we have these conversations, because growing up a privileged white kid, I never faced any of that. I played hockey my entire life. I've never witnessed racism firsthand, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It doesn't mean that we don't have to do anything about it, because if people of privilege or people of just who don't face racism choose to ignore it, that's the problem, right? It's not that, because it doesn't affect me in my everyday life, that I can just choose to sit back and ignore it. It's like, no, we need to use
ignorance is not. I think there's a term like ignorance is not a defense. I think it's like even in the legal world that you can't just claim ignorance you didn't know. And I mean, just because you say I don't know what's going on out there, like to your point about I don't even know, like doesn't mean it's not happening. That's not helping at all.
I agree, and you raise a good point. Just because you haven't experienced racism doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, and that's an important thing to acknowledge and an important mindset. I applaud you both.
On that note, I wanted to jump to because again, you made the point, and I saw actually one of your tweets talking about that you commend the players for going back and not ending, using the bubble and the platform in the season to continue and have and use that platform and leverage it. What are your thoughts? Do you think that this season, like, number one, I guess we'll finish, like, is going to end, is going to continue, or do you think that it's with the tensions? Is there a risk that it might,
No, I believe it's going to resume. I think I saw on Twitter today, Adrian Wojnarowski, I think it's how you pronounce his name. I met him once and I totally butchered it because I didn't expect to see him, and I respect him so much. He's the best insider in sports, period. There's Woj, there's Shams, and then there's Schefter, and then everybody else after that. Maybe Jeff Passan in baseball and Bob McKenzie in hockey, but Woj is at the top he's on the Mount Rushmore.
Yeah.
But he tweeted that the players want the season to resume. So it looks like it will be Saturday, and the season might have to be extended one extra week. It was supposed to end October 12th. It might go to the 19th, but we'll see at this point. I'm happy it's resuming, and I know that those guys with that platform, they can have a further reach. But again, in the behind the scenes, some work has to be done with people who wield a lot of power.
Yeah, for sure. So just to pivot one question, as a fan, who do you think's gonna take it this year?
Oh, okay. All right. Let's get to some happier stuff. Okay. So, because I'm on the Pals podcast, and I want to make sure that we can balance both serious and light.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so I work for Bleacher Report in Las Vegas, and I'm becoming a bit of a gambler, but I'm emotionally attached to the Toronto Raptors, obviously, because it's my hometown. So I'm not going to bet against the Toronto Raptors. In fact, I'm going to double down on the Toronto Raptors. I think their biggest threat is the Miami Heat, who I feel like Milwaukee is a little bit unstable. So if the Heat upset Milwaukee and the Raptors handle business with the Celtics, that's going to be a great series. But the Celtics, huge test, because the Celtics are very, very talented, and Jason Tatum's stock is rising. On the other side, I've been flirting with this idea of the Houston Rockets because they are volume shooters from three-point range. And there's like a team of 6'7" dudes, like literally 6'7" dudes, like 9 of them, and they can shoot three-pointers, not all that efficiently, but James Harden is the most unguardable player in the league. Like, he is his style isn't aesthetically pleasing, but he's going to give you 36 points a night, probably 8 assists and 8 rebounds. So like Houston would be my dark horse. But I'm a card carrying member of We the North, so my heart's with the Toronto Raptors.
The thing with Houston is they've got to go through the Lakers at some point, most likely.
Yeah, in the next round, if they eliminate
AD,
the Thunder, then yeah, they're gonna play the Lakers. Yeah.
Yeah, they have no big men. It's like, how do you guard someone like AD? Like
that's gonna be PJ Tucker's job, and PJ Tucker is 6'4.5", and AD is like 7'1". It's not gonna be easy, but that's going to be the job.
So that's why when they traded Capella away, I was like, what? Like he wasn't even that big, but that was their big man, and I'm like, okay, they're going.
Yeah.
Like, it's gonna be interesting.
Listen,
it's working for them right now.
Yeah, and Daryl Morey, the GM of the Rockets, made a business decision. He's like, you can trade Capella to the Hawks. I traded away Chris Paul for Russell Westbrook. All our chips are in the middle of the table, and we're going to see if this thing goes. Now, Russell, James, Eric Gordon have long contracts and at a pretty high clip, but I think for Daryl Morey, he's like, listen, we've tried all these other things. We're going to see if this works. And when Russell Westbrook comes back, he's got an injured quad. And if he returns to play with that Mamba DNA, then anything's possible, man. Because as much as like there's no one to guard Anthony Davis, and really there's no one to guard LeBron James. Like who can guard James Harden and who can guard Russell Westbrook if he's cooking? So,
yeah. You know what's interesting though? Speaking of Daryl Morey, like I think that it seems like at least he's pivoted his mindset and strategy like every year for the past I don't know how many years. Like he tried. Again, he had Clint Capella. He pivoted. Chris Paul comes up, and then he brings in Russ, and like he has changed his style so many times. And I guess he's kind of like the money ball, if you will.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
But it's interesting. Like if this doesn't work, does he pivot again next year, and does he dump Russ again, or do you think he's committed like with this strategy?
Oh, good question. Yeah, him and Sam Hinkie, who was the Sixers GM, they really embraced analytics. And Sam Hinkie I think Pablo Torre coined the phrase "trust the process." But yeah, after like Mike D'Antoni's contract is not it's not guaranteed past this year. It hasn't been renewed, so he's likely out. And like if they don't go to the finals, because they made it to the conference finals, I think 2 years ago, and they got beat by the Golden State Warriors. They had that meltdown in Game 7, missed 27 3-point shots in a row. And D'Antoni will likely be, he might go to Indiana or maybe Brooklyn, who knows, but. It feels like this is the last straw for Daryl Morey. Like this is the last ditch attempt because those other machinations of his rosters have not worked, have not gotten them to the finals. So it's I love the theater of the NBA, man. It's just like I love the pettiness. I love the players and the personas. I love the tunnel walks. I'm looking at some of these outfits. I'm like, you're gonna spend $1,200 on a friggin' t-shirt or like a pair of Amiri jeans, and then I'm looking, like PJ Tucker's got 91 pairs of kicks in the bubble. Like that is excess. It's American excess.
Yeah.
and selfishly, I wish I was a size 14 so I could be like, yo, PJ, you got to send me some of those kicks. But I just love the theater that it creates, and it's such a fun league.
Well, I was gonna to that point, I think it's like probably the only league now, if not the number one league, that controls the narrative and the storyline and the news cycle like 12 months of the year. And it's interesting now what's going on because obviously like things have been pushed, no summer league. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the coming months. But like you got to commend the NBA. Mark Silver, again, who's, even though he's only been the commish for the last, 5 or 6 years. Like
Mark Silver, I think, I want to say like 12 or 13. Okay, like less than a decade. Yeah.
But even then he was behind the scenes. Like he was still probably pulling a lot of strings. Like he's kind of, you hear a lot of stuff about how it's become a players league, how he's advocated for a lot of the stuff. Like he was, pulling a lot of strings behind the scenes as well. And you got to commend them, man. Like they're never not in the news. And like to your point, whether it's a pettiness storyline, whether it's someone on NBA Twitter chirping at somebody, whether it's Embiid running in the summer through like Philly trying to get in shape. Meanwhile, he still comes in overweight. Like you got to give that league. I honestly, maybe the NFL still is the biggest per se, but I think the NBA is headed for number one globally, maybe behind soccer. But I think,
go ahead, Ricky. Go ahead.
The reason why is that they let their players like interact with the fans like no other league. I feel like after every game, you're seeing some basketball player tweeting, Instagramming,
handing out shoes.
Yeah, there's always something happening. Like, you think about how many times they're high-fiving and giving away jerseys, shoes. They're always doing something. Meanwhile, it's like, you think about MLB, I don't even think they're allowed to have like phones with them at all during it. Like, MLB used to be like the big sport, right? You think about MLB is they play 162 games a year. It's literally half the year. And it's like almost no kid, that's wrong. Not no kid wants to grow up and be a professional baseball player, but it's a dying sport almost. It's such a long game. It's kind of run out, where it's like basketball. Every legit 30 seconds, something happens. Brick, slam dunk, alley-oop, three-pointer, like always something happening. And then after the game, okay, shoes are being given out. Jerseys, like they start doing jersey swaps. Like you got LeBron's chalk at the beginning of every game. So there's always something happening.
It's the best league, hands down.
I do credit Adam Silver like you do too, but I also credit David Stern, who was I think he became the NBA commissioner in like 1984, and he realized how stars drive products, and like the entertainment or the NBA should be thought of as an entertainment product. And in the 80s, you had Magic Johnson in LA, you had Larry Bird in Boston, you had both coasts riveted because you had these two superstars. And then Michael takes the lead to like the 17th level, and he becomes the most famous athlete in the world, along with Mike Tyson and Michael Jordan is a brand, like Michael Jackson, Mike Tyson, like Michael Jordan, you know what I mean? And but the NBA really embraces its stars and lets its stars be their authentic selves. And also it helps that it's a helmetless league, so you can see the players' faces. Everybody loves Steph Curry because he's 6'3", great family man. He's got cute kids. He's an unbelievable talent. I mean, LeBron is just like, LeBron's less relatable because LeBron's like 6'8" and just like a physical specimen. People love the tenacity of Kobe. But then and then there's like Kevin Durant, who's like a vulnerable dude. He's a superstar, but like still has a burner account and still will clap back on Twitter because people are in his mentions blowing him up, calling him a snake and all that kind of stuff. But he's a human being. So you get some guys with a huge, with a lot of armor. And then you get guys who are not afraid to be vulnerable or not afraid to be a little bit in left field, like Kyrie Irving, who seems to be in his own orbit with what he says and the way he goes about things. So that league embraces its stars.
Well, you mentioned some big names there: Mike Tyson, Michael Jordan, Kobe. I know you've interviewed all of them. Out of all the people you've interviewed, who's your favorite?
Well, I had incredible moments with each of them, like for different reasons. So they're all like on my Mount Rushmore. Mike Tyson put Vaseline on my face when I was at his home, and that was incredible because I was he's like so thoughtful, and then he was playful, and then I feared him just looking in his eyes because like I could feel how people would be intimidated, and I didn't have any physical fear, but I could feel it. Like if that dude, like if I said something flagrant, I could have been at the bottom of his pool, not breathing, And then Michael Jordan, I got to hug uncomfortably for longer than any human, not his child or his wife, or a teammate, full face on his chest, hearing his heartbeat. He could feel the heat of my face on his body. And then Bean elevated me more than any other athlete. And it was an incredible experience, an incredible blessing that he chose me as the person that he was going to let his guard down with. And it's like, okay, I'll have fun with this guy. He's chubby. He's a little bit weird. He's asking to stay at my house. He's Canadian. All right, this will be the guy that I'm going to have some fun with and show my personality. So I was like super blessed to have those moments with all three of those legends.
Do you think that to that point you just made with Kobe, do you think listen, we grew up watching Cabbie on the street. Like we remember on the score back in the day when that was blowing up, like come on, throw it on. Do you think to the point with Kobe, rest in peace, feels like it's been forever ago now, but do you think that it's partly because of the guy he is and he's like, he embraced you from that? Or do you think it's also partly your style? Because your style back in the day, like even now, is like it was a little disarming too. Because it wasn't like, okay, tell me about your career, tell me about this. Like you're like hugging dudes, you're buying them pajamas, like.
Thank you. I think it was just, timing was big, and also my style. I wore baseball caps and T-shirts and sneakers. I didn't look like a regular member of the media, with like a golf shirt and terrible New Balance sneakers or those ugly Nike Monarch chunky dad shoes that you can get at Walmart in the bin for $30. When I was a kid, like I always wanted Nikes, but then I would get Lynx. That's like the equivalent, or Brooks. That's the equivalent. Like these guys are still anyway. So I didn't look or sound or ask similar questions to those guys. So timing for sure, and then my style definitely played a factor. And and I was just very fortunate, man, because I'm an oddball. And like how would you react if someone's like, hey, can I stay at your house? Like, what do you mean? Like, this is not part of the protocol. This is not what we agreed to in this exchange of question answer. But then I made a left turn, and then I tried to make a whole career about living out here in left field and setting up a tent and, roasting marshmallows in the outfield and desecrating that cathedral. And it served me well.
Well, and if this is too personal, feel free not to answer. But when you heard the news, what was that like for you? Because you obviously
devastating. Like everybody, shock and devastation, man. One of my boys, from Sportsnet called me, and then he's like, check Twitter. I'm like, what? Or it's like, okay. And then I did, and then I spoke to my producer Dave. I called my girl. And then it's just, I kept refreshing, like everybody, like refreshing the news on TMZ and just refreshing Twitter. Like, is this real? Like, I need more confirmation. But once I saw it, the accident on TMZ, I was like, oh, this is for real. And I learned that, like, on the plane, like the Lakers played in Philadelphia, where Kobe grew up for part of his adolescence. And then on the plane is when they found out, before they landed in LA, and they found out an hour before TMZ did. And then it was just like absolute shock. And I was fortunate enough to go to attend his memorial in Staples Center, and it was the most incredible celebration of life that I've ever experienced. I hope I don't have to experience any more of those, because it was really emotional, but it was incredible, man. And one thing that I really loved is that at the beginning, there were a couple of people recording, and then the phone just went away. So like the 20,000 people shared this moment without feeling the need to document it, to show people for clout or for clicks. Like, no, we are here for this, to celebrate this one person's life, and we don't need to tell the world that we're here. We're fortunate enough to be here in a weird way. I shouldn't say fortunate, but we're here because this person's life meant so much to us. So let's just all be present and enjoy this celebration. It was incredible, man. I saw like Beyonce perform, Christina Aguilera perform, Alicia Keys perform. I saw Michael Jordan cry in real life, and Shaq was hilarious. And, I like all the luminaries of like basketball royalty were there, and it was powerful, man. It was awesome.
Well, I mean, I can't even imagine what it's like to be there. And it honestly is crazy to think that everything that's happened in 2020, like that happened so early on. And like we're in August, and it feels like, again, like it's been.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. Excuse me.
One big one that we wanted to ask is, and not again, don't know if you can share this. Is there a Kobe story that was really memorable to you, whether it was on one of your segments, whether it was something off air that people don't know about? Like, is there one that really resonated with you?
Yeah, there's one time we would have to, like, maybe one time at Marble when we're having drinks with Peter Gurgis, I'll tell you, like,
fair.
Big shout out.
Fair, yeah.
Like a different story, but like there's I want to say it was like 2015 or something. I pitched Kobe a couple of ideas and he didn't like them, and he goes, write some Dave Chappelle show shit, man. I was like, Dave Chappelle? You want me to write Dave Chappelle show shit? I'm a fat reporter from Toronto, man. I'm not a comedic genius. Like, Dave Chappelle is like one of the, he's inducted, I think, at the Kennedy, he got Kennedy Center honors. Like, he's one of the most prolific writers of his generation in comedy and and in pop culture. But he like Kobe's thing, and you hear these anecdotes all the time. It's like he really pushed people to be better, or pushed people to be a better version of themselves. And that's part of that whole Mamba mentality where he kind of created his own mystique, but we believe in it because it's so universal. Everybody, the universal theme of working hard can span across borders regardless of what language you speak or what religion you recognize. Like hard work is universal. So when he said that to me, I did like, okay. So I was like, all right, let me go in my lab and come up with new ideas. And I wrote some, and he's like, So then like the next year, I pitched this idea for like the reunion of the 1996 NBA draft. There's like this iconic Slam cover where there's like 12 players on the cover. Steve Nash is on, Ray Allen, Iverson, Kobe. Who else is on that cover? Marcus Camby. I was like, yeah, we should do a reunion at the 2016 NBA All-Star Weekend in Toronto. He's like, I don't want to do that yet. I was like, okay. Another one was an AA meeting for retired superheroes. So then I wrote a part for Nash, and then I would be leading the session, and then just have like guys just speaking about their vulnerabilities. Like, here are these superheroes. And then we just hire some actors to be like a Batman and a Spider-Man. And then there's Kobe, and then there's Nash, and whatever get up we were gonna. And he's like, nah. And then the one that he liked was, and I got to credit my friend Nigel Downer for sparking this idea. We were playing squash one day, and he's like, what if Kobe didn't go to the NBA right away? I was like, ooh, yeah, there's something there. Like, he said he was going to go to Duke. Like, that's the school he would have chosen. And then now just like, what if you guys were roommates at Duke? I'm like, that is amazing. And then so then I was like, thank you so much. I wrote it. I wrote like 5 drafts before I sent it to Molly Carter, who runs Kobe's company. And so sorry, I pitched it to Kobe first. And then I just showed him like 2 beds, like this generic dorm room, the Duke carpet, and like pitch. He goes, this is funny because I would mother bleep and kill you if we were actually roommates. I'm like, so should I write this one? He goes, okay, write that one. I was like, okay, nice. Wrote it, sent it to Molly. She's like, you got to change the ending. I'm like, oh, the ending involved, like at the end, we're hiding under the beds. There's like girls in the closet. We're 18-year-old kids at college. Like, and then there's a whole thing about edibles. And she's like, you got to. So I rewrote the ending like multiple times, and then it was just like ghost. Like, I didn't hear anything back. So Kobe just got too involved in his own projects, and he was writing himself. He wrote a children's series, Wizard series. He started a venture fund for like $100 million. He wrote Dear Basketball. So he had all these other, and then he was super present in the lives of his girls. Both Natalia, who was playing volleyball, then Gigi, who was playing basketball. And I love like his transition. He's like, I've been in the spotlight my whole career. Now it's time to move Gigi into the spotlight. And I'm gonna slide into the shadows so that the focus is on my daughter. And also, I loved how he was elevating other stars in the NBA, and like he was a huge advocate for women's sports, soccer as well. And he had close relationships with Sydney Leroux and Sabrina Ionescu from Oregon, who now plays for the Liberty with Kia Nurse. And wearing the WNBA hoodie, like you don't see that in other sports. Like there aren't hockey players repping. I've never seen a hockey player wear a Hayley Wickenheiser jersey, and she is our most famous. She's in the Canada Sports Hall of Fame. Or you don't see, there's no baseball equivalent, I suppose softball, and there's no NFL equivalent, but you just don't see it like you do in basketball. It's really like a brotherhood and a sisterhood, and they really prop each other up. And I think that advocacy and that that brotherhood, for lack of a better word, is tremendous.
Yeah.
Well, is there any chance we can get a sneak peek of that, the script you wrote?
We had cameos. So I wrote a cameo for Steve Nash, and I wrote a cameo for Paul Gasol. And I never actually got to, did I tell Steve? Steve and I did an event in Toronto for like Boston Pizza. And I recalled one of the most embarrassing moments of my career, which is when I was interviewing Steve, I was chewing gum and the gum fell out of my mouth and into his lap, like landing right in the danger zone. And this is at the All-Star game, and there's a bunch of people in the locker room just watching me because I'm super obnoxious. I'm loud. I'm animated. And then now there's a piece of like pink gum right in the center of his red basketball shorts. And I'm wearing this cowboy hat. I'm just making a total mockery. And I'm like trying to knock it. So I'm telling Steve Nash this story while we're on stage at this event. But when we were backstage, I don't know if I told him about the cameo that I wanted him, because had Kobe agreed, okay, yes, let's shoot it, let's find a day, then I reached out to Steve, like, Steve, I need you to be the resident assistant, like the RA, or I need you to be like a teammate on the team, like we had a Coach K, and we reached out to Coach K, and Coach K was like we reached out before Kobe agreed. Coach K was a bit on the fence, but at least that we made contact, and we just needed him to record a few lines in his desk, feet up on the desk on the phone. I can't remember any specific dialogue, but it started with us playing like NBA Jam or something from the 90s. On like one of my friends as a suggestion. I think it was NBA Jam. That would have made sense for the time period of 1996 when he would have been a freshman at Duke.
That would have been awesome, man.
Thanks, man.
I was just say, yeah. Before we're gonna start wrap up. I wanted to just ask. So obviously, we didn't get a chance to speak too much about betting and Bleacher Report and what you're doing now. But why don't you? I guess for the people listening that don't know, why don't you tell us a little bit more about that?
No problem. So we have this show called Group Chat, where it's very much like we try to make it as authentic as possible, and it's like 5 friends who are betting junkies, and the audience that we cater to are also bettors, whether guys are out there trying to hit 8-team or 10-team parlays, or some people are just trying to make single bets. But we use betting lingo, and we all play sort of different versions of ourselves. So I'm a novice bettor. I don't bet every day. I don't need that action. But then we have like my co-host Kelly Stewart, who is a like diehard, like she is what you would call a sharp, because she's so dialed. She has so much information, and she wagers a lot on games, and not just the number of games, but like the price point. Like So and then we have a couple of degenerates on the crew. So Group Chat is on the Bleacher Report app. We generally record on Wednesdays, and it's live in the app, and I think it's also live on Twitter. But I believe the next one we're going to do is either Monday or Tuesday. So just if you have the Bleacher Report app, you'll see it, or if you follow like the BR Betting, like the Instagram or Twitter account, you'll find it there. That's like the current thing that we're doing, because we were working on a game show, and there are no sports game shows, and we did multiple versions of multiple episodes while we were at Caesar's Palace, but since the coronavirus, that's on pause. So we'll see when we'll be able to launch that again, because you need to interact with people, have some stakes in the game, be able to win some money. We had built this like shredder where they would like shred like signed sneakers, and it was called Win or Destroy. So hopefully that can return in some capacity, because it was a lot of fun working on that show.
Actually, funny you mentioned that. That's what I wanted to ask. So I think I actually did bump into you at Caesar's Palace the weekend of the Tyson Fury fight. I don't know if you was. I think.
Oh, okay.
Brad Johnson.
Wait, the first one or the second one?
In Fury versus Wilder in February. I think.
Okay.
Sunday, I was watching football with a buddy of mine. Or was it Saturday? No, it was a Sunday after the fight. We're sitting there watching football, putting some bets in. And we walk around as we're making the bet. And I think I saw you, and I don't know for sure. But that's how Chad Johnson sitting right in front, just smoking his cigar, hanging out. I wanted to come by and say hi, but I was like,
oh, man. Yeah. We both lost a lot of money on Deontay Wilder that night.
Same.
Oh, man. It was.
Fight.
What's that?
I took Wilder in that fight, too. I lost.
Did you? Yeah. I think I don't want to say because my wife is here, but I lost a few.
Oh man, it's too funny.
Well, Cabbie, there's a lot more we want to talk about, but we know we're kind of at that time. But next time you're in Toronto, we definitely got to get you on. Or next time we're in Vegas, we got to do a live episode, because
I'd love that. Yes, let's lock it in at some point for sure.
Is amazing, and we love it. But again, we want to thank you for coming on. We've got 2 questions we actually always ask every single guest.
Okay, wonderful.
I'll hit you with the first one. If there was a movie about your life, who would you want to star as you? It could be anybody from any given point in time.
Yeah, it would be. Thank you. Great question. It would be Kenan Thompson from Saturday Night Live. He's like kind of the chubbier,
Yeah.
the chubbier dude. Yeah, Kenan Thompson would play me, and he would be incredible. Like, and he's 37 times more talented, so it would be a real honor to have him play me in the movie of my life.
That's a good one.
That's a good one. He has some great impersonation. His Barkley impersonation is
He's so good. He's so talented. I love that dude.
The last one. If you could give one piece of advice to your younger self, what would it be?
Oh wow, a younger me. Oh my gosh. What would I? Oh boy. That's a tough one because I don't know if I've ever been asked that.
Good job, Georgie. Stumped him.
Oh, well done. I made a lot of mistakes, man. I would say I would tell myself to take better care of your relationships, both with like romantic or like with athletes. And I guess for work, as is more of a work question, I made some mistakes that I regret as far as like not being more careful or being, I don't know if careful is the right word, but I definitely messed up some relationships, which I regret. So that I would tell myself to just be more careful, be more mindful, or just like be more aware of how things could fall apart. So that's what I'd tell myself.
Some sound advice.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Cabbie, again, we appreciate it. And if people want to find out more about you and what you're up to, where should they go? How can they find you?
Thank you for asking. Just on Twitter, I'm the real Cabbie, and on Instagram, on Twitter it's @Cabbie, and on Instagram it's the real Cabbie, and most of my content's there, and most of the fun projects that I'm involved in, you can find them there. So
definitely, we'll tag everything in the episode. But again, you've been an awesome guest. We really appreciate it. Next time you're in the city, we'll have some drinks. We got to hear some more stories. Yeah. Well, I wanted to even ask you about the podcast that you had because I used to listen, but I guess you stopped a little while ago.
I did, yeah. Once I left TSN, then the podcast came to an end. But I appreciate being on this one, and I look forward to when we can record a live one.
Awesome,
appreciate it.
We would thank you a lot for the time. Really appreciate it, Cabbie.
You got it, fellas. You got it.
All right, signing off. Cheers, guys.
Okay, cheers. See ya.
Okay, thanks, fellas. That was great. I really appreciate it.
All right. Cheers.
Hey,